I try to leave theory out of it. It's more like you study that stuff, and then from hopefully your study is deep enough that you gain an almost intuitive understanding of it, and then you can actually use it.
Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. Welcome back to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast, I should say. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, I am Erol Ulug. I play guitar and do vocals for the band Teeth.
Erol, the last time I spoke to you was in 2021, and you described Teeth as being brutal and largely in the realm of death metal. Is that still true?
Yeah. Same.
Do you want to say anything else about Teeth's music? Do you feel like you guys stray outside of the conventions of death metal, or the understood way death metal is usually played?
I mean, I would say that we're kind of like, I wouldn't say that like we stray outside, because I feel like death metal has quite a bit of room within it as a, genre. There's like a bunch of different sub styles of it, but I'd still say, for like lack of getting overly deep with it, that we're in the realm of death metal. If you want to be more specific, you could say we're in the dissonant or disso death kind of branch of it, very much coming out of like what Gorguts laid the foundations of. But like, I would still say at the end of the day, we're a death metal band, maybe a little bit left of center, but yeah, we're still a death metal band.
And I'm not sure how many people know this, but you yourself actually come from a jazz background and have a degree in jazz performance or something like that?
Yes, I do. I have a bachelor's.
Yeah, I'm curious how your background influences the way you play guitar specific to this kind of music.
I mean, okay, it how could it not, right? But it's kind of more like I just kind of reached a point in my guitar playing where it seemed if I wanted to I think honestly, what happened was the longest time I would hear jazz musicians and they'd be reaching for more unconventional notes or more ambiguous, dissonant chords and tonalities. And that, especially as I got older, intrigued me more. So I learned, I got into studying it and learning it as a means of kind of to understand that vocabulary. And through that, I would say that kind of filters down into teeth. But I try to I try to avoid intellectualizing the compositional process, even though it's gonna happen. Like left to my own devices, I'm gonna do that. But especially as time goes on, and I would say for this record more than any, there's been an effort to when writing to just kind of with play the guitar and just kind of just go out there and reach for stuff, and then when a certain riff or whatever catches our ear or attention, to just that okay, we like that, and then build off that, but not try. I really don't try to like think, oh well, I'm in this key, therefore I should play these chords, or I try to leave theory out of it. It's more like you study that stuff, and then from hopefully your study is deep enough that you gain an almost intuitive understanding of it, and then you can actually use it. But if it comes from an intellectual place, then it usually ends up sounding like that, and then your shit just sounds like an exercise. I don't have any interest in that.
Since we last spoke, I spoke to someone else who has a similar background to yours in the sense that he also comes from a jazz background and studied music in school. And he was telling me that at the time that he was learning music or he was in school, it kind of became hip or cool for jazz people to listen to metal. I think he specifically mentioned Meshuggah. Did you have experience with that? Was jazz becoming cool with some of your classmates, or
Oh,
were people pretty open to the other stuff you're into?
I mean, yeah. I mean, especially Meshuggah. Like when, I mean, most, I would say most of my like classmates in the jazz program were at least aware of Meshuggah. And then there's even kind of a certain branch of contemporary jazz that is pretty clearly kind of responding to Meshuggah's rhythmic like sense. Like Ari Honig has a record from 2011 called Lines of Oppression, and you can definitely hear, especially in that, I believe off the top of my head, the last track, Higher to Highest on. There's definitely a lot like to me. I hear that I'm like, there's very like obvious Meshuggah influence, and the piano player on that record, Tigran Hamasyan, who is an insane piano player, keyboardist, he clearly like there's Meshuggah influence in what he does. I mean, I think he talks about it too. It's not even like it's not a secret.
That's interesting.
I would say most of the guys I went to school with were like aware of metal, and like certainly the drummers are more at least aware of it because of the chops, and like it's kind of for them there's definitely like an impressiveness in watching metal drumming. But I was feel like I was definitely in the minority in the sense that like they were like aware of it and they might appreciate it, but like I don't think they really most of them didn't really listen to it, at least not like as regularly as I would, for example.
Right. It was just interesting when I spoke to the other musician about that. It seemed interesting to me that the crossover, because I came into this stuff in the '90s, and so there, the jazz influence was starting to bleed into metal a little bit and a little bit into death metal, and it's interesting to see it go the other way as well.
Yeah, it's definitely there's like a cross pollination thing going on.
So the last time we spoke was around the time that you released the Finite EP, and you guys had been coming out of the COVID and lockdown period. What have you guys been up to since then?
Well, besides the whole COVID stuff, pretty much the same shit, to be honest. You know, mostly working. Been working on this record. We took maybe a year and a half off playing live at all to just really focus and do this record. And we're just starting. We literally last month we played our first show this year, and we got some stuff coming up the end of this month, and then again in September is our release show. So we're just kind of getting back on the horse in regards to playing live, and then once the record's out, we definitely want to get out there and tour and push it more than we ever have before. So, but generally, besides that, I mean, we've been working on the record. That's the short story.
Did you get to do a lot of touring in support of Finite?
Not really, because I mean, actually, the whole reason Finite even happened was our previous record, The Curse of Entropy, came out late 2019, and then the world shut down by like March, April of 2020. So when that happened, we are like, well, it's clear that touring isn't, who knows, it's like, who knows about touring? So we kind of the original plan was to actually get out there and push that record more, but everything got steamrolled. So then we kind of went back into the studio mode and did Finite. So that's kind of the explanation for that record.
When we were talking about Finite and Finite was about to be released, you mentioned that you were already working on the follow-up full length, and you had 4 or 5 songs written at that time. At the end of August, that full length will be released, and it will be called The Will of Hate, which will be released through Translation Loss. Tell me about The Will of Hate. Considering how close the writing periods were for Finite and this record, are some ideas from Finite carried over into The Will of Hate?
Not really. I mean, there isn't a super deliberate effort on our part to be like, okay, we just did that, and now we are going to, it's not really, we're much more like little kids throwing paint around. And then eventually, yeah, it's much more like Jackson Pollock than like, then like we sit and we like have this vision and then we go and fulfill it. No, we just like start throwing shit, and through kind of that chaotic primordial state, then we kind of like, I don't know, things kind of like will come out of it, and then we'll start to put them into the songs, and like kind of start from a place of chaos, and then it moves towards order. Yeah, but it's not really like, it's not like this record came out of, it's not like, oh, we had stuff left over from Finite and that's what became this. It's not really like that.
Right.
Maybe, okay, I kind of take back what I said a little bit. I remember after Finite, and certainly after playing some of that material live, there was some conscious effort broadly in terms of, for example, the first song on Finite, Garden of Eyes, is like 7 minutes. And it's this whole fucking journey. It starts with like a clean part, and then it goes into this free jazz section. And then this, it's this whole fucking long shit. It's great. I'm proud of it. But like, playing it live is a chore. And it's just straight up, it's a little, in retrospect, is perhaps a little too ambitious. And I think we only played it like 2 or 3 times, and we haven't, I don't know, after that, we're like, we don't even care, play it live. No one's been championing for it. But so like, there's that, and I think,
well, there's always that one guy, right? There's always that one guy who'll show up at the show and be like, hey, how come you didn't play XYZ song, right?
Yeah. Well, because it's 7 minutes long and it's fucking hard.
You could play for an hour, and the one song they wanted to hear, they'll complain about not hearing.
Yeah. The thing about that is, I'm in Teeth and I don't want more than half an hour. So, yeah. I mean, I'm flattered that someone might want greater than half an hour worth of Teeth live, but I personally just don't think that. I think brevity and intensity are very much like this. And once you start to push the time, once you start to really like get up in there into like 40 minutes or more, it's like, yeah, the intensity is it's it's freaking hard. It's exhausting and hard. But even if you kill it, it's like, you know, if you haven't gotten your message across within about half an hour, you might have fucked up.
Right, right.
Or like, like maybe focus on getting that. Maybe it's focus on what you're doing in those 30 minutes a little more instead of just piling on more shit.
Well, with that in mind, was there an effort on your part for this album to make all the songs more compact?
Yes, that's where this was going. Thank you for reining it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, funny enough, I believe off the top of my head, 8 of the songs are right around 3 minutes and 30 seconds, which wasn't intentional, at least not like, it was very much like, oh, look at that. But there was an effort of anytime a song got a little long, it was like, I don't know, like we've been more aware of being kind of economical with our writing on this record. And I'd say our approach is a little more distilled than it's been in the past, in the sense that there's more repeating parts, there's more like motives. The Curse of Entropy in particular is like just fucking big, just mess of ideas, and there's just idea, just constantly throwing riffs and tangents at the listener with very little concern.
Yeah.
The Will of Hate, there's definitely much more intention and like, okay, why is this part here? Like, does it have to go on the song? Like, and just trying to just be really conscious of not doing stuff for the sake of, or like, not being overly attached to any part if it's not working.
So we had an extensive discussion about the way you guys write songs and your approach to songwriting. Has anything changed since then? Are you guys more or less approaching songs in the same way?
Generally, there's some effort in this record though to kind of change it up a little bit. One of the songs, Apparition, was actually a good chunk of that came out of the bass player, Peter. He had a handful of riffs, and we kind of like basically in a practice all together as a band, which isn't traditionally how we write, kind of like demanded he give us riffs, and then we kind of like sifted them out and maybe did a little bit of edits to them on the spot, but basically like came to him for the seeds of the ideas, took what me and Justin kind of were like, well, that's cool. And then if we agreed on something, then kind of took it and put it together. And pretty much by the end of the practice, it got arranged into that song. I think I went home and refined it a little bit, but yeah. And there's even a few more instances of that, of us writing as a band, kind of organically old style, all in the practice room, which isn't necessarily how things went for Finite or the Curse of Entropy. That was a little more like me on my own, or me and the other guitar player, Justin, with our guitars writing, and then bring it to the other guys and flush it out. But yeah, this one was a little more, there's a little more collaboration, there's a little more just kind of spontaneity of working together. And I think that both makes it more interesting and is just more engaging to write it that way for us.
Which was the song that you got Peter to come up with the riffs for?
Apparition.
Apparition. Okay, cool. And previously it was mostly you and Justin
Yeah,
coming up with riffs and then bringing them to the practice space, right?
yeah.
I'm curious, why? Why did you feel the need to be more collaborative this time and draw out Peter's contributions?
I think it was, I don't have a great answer. I don't have a great resounding why to why.
I mean, it kind of sounds like you did it for fun.
Kind of.
Yeah.
It was more like I think this was rather late in the process. Like we had already had like 9, 10 songs. So it was kind of like, well, when we get to that point in the record, it's like, well, what do we do? And then I think me and Justin were like, Pete, what do you got? Just like, like just kind of
Put him on the spot.
kind of just doing it because the answer is kind of because we didn't work that way. It was like,
Right. Okay.
well, we wrote 9 songs how we usually write. Like we need to, I don't know, we need to like shake up the paradigm and how we approach it. So, and Pete was there, and I forget. I think he was even maybe just like at practice, kind of noodling around and playing some of them. And then he played something, and one of us was like, "Hey, what was that?" And then we like kind of fished it out of him. So yeah, it was kind of more because simply we hadn't operated that way.
Is Peter kind of like a typical bass player? Is he very quiet and kind of not very forceful with his suggestions, and then you kind of have to bring it out of him?
I wouldn't say Peter's like quiet. He's also a guitar player. Like he plays guitar in his other band, Mortal Wound. But in T, he's he's kind of like traditionally, he's kind of been like, you guys take the reins with writing. He'll throw his 2 cents in. It's not like he won't, but generally me and Justin come to him with stuff that's fairly fleshed out, and then he's kind of very much a team player and kind of seeks to work within that. There hasn't been like too many instances where like, we bring him a song and he's like, I don't like this. I don't want to do that. No, thankfully, that's not his vibe. He's much more like Hakuna Matata.
Yeah.
And, you know, he'll throw his ideas and he'll give his 2 cents, but he's not like overly hung up on like having a, huge say in what goes down or what have you.
What would you say the role of the bass is in Teeth's music, or the role of the bass in general in death metal?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a similar answer to both, but I mean, really in death metal, it's to add an extension. It's really to extend the low end and make the guitars seem even bigger than they actually are. I mean, most of the time in death metal, the bass is following the guitar. Not 100% all the time, but I would say most of the time. And the tone is usually such that it kind of melds into the guitar tone. It doesn't really poke out and stick out distinctly. It's like kind of trying to form this huge wall of guitar bass that I think most people hear and they just perceive it as, oh, wow, the guitars sound crazy. When in reality, they're actually perceiving a very well blended guitar and bass summation. In Teeth, I'd say that's generally the approach, except that he's had since, what was it? We did a split with Vargas. At that point, we added a low F to his bass and we got an extended scale bass. So he's had lower notes than us for a long time until this record, where 3 of the tracks we drop our bottom string to meet him on a low F. So his role has been, if he's not following us, a lot of times what we'll do is have the bass hit a super low root that we may not even have on the guitars. And that opened up a lot of cool opportunities for us into making shit really heavy, but also like giving us a wider palette of how to kind of create a variety of chords between the guitars and the bass. Like by having him play an even lower or alternate root note here and there, it gives it a cool sound, and it's usually makes it way heavier.
Does the bass add to the overall dissonance? Is that part of the role of the bass?
I I wouldn't say that like the bass. I wouldn't say that the bass actually is like adding to the discordance. It's not often that he's playing a note against us.
Right.
The discordance is largely either a product of the guitar parts or the interplay between the guitars. Yeah, the bass is really more there kind of for thickness. And there are a handful of times where the guitars might be playing really fast, but then the bass is playing really slow. And that's definitely a texture that we really like, because it kind of allows us to be weird and like, dissonant, and like kind of have this like the guitars can like be more like menacing, but then like the bass can almost be playing almost like a doom metal line within it and have this heaviness that we really like.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but from an engineering standpoint, is it tricky recording the bass for death metal, because it's constantly squashed between the guitars, which are down tuned, and the double kick drumming, and so it kind of sits in a weird area where there's a lot of overlap between other things.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, from an engineering standpoint, death metal's fucking terrible. Like, it is. It's the worst. It's like, it is like, I mean, it's almost like the defining attributes of the genre are like destined to clash.
Right.
And they're like, well, it's like, yeah, we're going to do double bass through this. And yeah, the bass is playing an F, almost an octave below a standard tuning, and then the guitars are palm muting with tons of distortion, and then the singer's gonna do these low gurgles and all over it, and it's like, okay, make that sound convincing. Yeah, it's not easy. It's probably one of the steepest and like least forgiving contexts for someone to, from an engineering standpoint. But I fucking love it. And it's sick. So I do it.
Yeah. And as the producer and as the engineer, how do you solve that problem? What's your approach to making it sound good?
Well, it's kind of just you just kind of gotta carve out. You gotta be pretty strategic and choosy in the way that you like craft the tones for the bass and the guitars. In our case, we've always distorted the bass, which I'm personally a big fan of, both because it makes the bass sound angry, but also because it makes the bass more guitar-like. So, and also naturally reduces the dynamic range of the bass. And it just helps contribute to what I was talking about earlier of the guitars and bass kind of melding into this big, like, this kind of, it's like I'm after like this big massive sound, not like, oh, there's the bass and oh, there's the guitar. Like, I don't really want you to know where one begins and one ends. I'm not really concerned with the listener having a clear idea of that. I just want it to be as, a big mass.
If people don't know, you have your own studio, Bright Light Studio.
Yes.
And you not only handle Teeth's recordings, but a lot of the bands in Southern California, a lot of the death metal bands. This album sounds very compact. It sounds very dense. It's like, like a cinder block hitting you over the head or falling on your head. You know what I mean? It's like, was that the intention? Did you want it to be like a very compact sounding album? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. The last time we spoke, we did discuss your work as an engineer, and what you said was the album is done when you surrender, when you wave the white flag.
Yeah. Yeah. So is that way.
It sounds like it is a challenge. And I don't know if this is specific to Teeth's music because you're both the songwriter and the performer, in addition to being the engineer, or just in general, if recording this music is always challenging, is always a struggle.
The short answer is it's pretty much always like that. But obviously, with my own records, I'm ultra precious, and also because there isn't really, there's some external factors, the label, we're talking back and forth and they're like, hey, you have a timeline, we agree on something, but it goes both ways. It's like when you're in the band and the engineer, it's gonna sound as good as you're willing to. It's basically a matter of how far will you go until you surrender and wave that white flag. And that it's not like, whereas with when I'm the engineer recording another band, they're paying me for my time. So at some point financially, they're probably going to be like, all right, we got to like wrap this up. Unless they just want to bleed money into my pocket forever, which kind of happens sometimes, but still, it's not the same as when it's your own record and you can just feasibly go on and on and on. I'd say there's always an element of that, but especially with my own record.
spoke with a couple bands who worked with you recently, Tapantli and Swamp Beast.
Yeah,
You worked on their most recent releases.
I'm also in Zone Conley for the just for
Yeah, yeah, that's right. You played drums on the first album, right?
yeah. I played drums and now I've actually moved to guitar. I
Okay.
brought in Alejandro, the same drummer of Teeth, to do the drums for the second record because he loves drums and he's very good at them. And Ryan programmed, he kind of like upped his ambition with the drum parts, and I was like, this sounds sick, but like I don't really have the time or energy to drop out of life for like 9 months to play this shit right.
Right.
So we're gonna just bring in Alejandro, and it turned out great.
When you're working with other bands, what are you looking to capture? Is it performance side? Or are you looking to capture a certain energy, like a live energy? Or do you have a like a philosophy on how death metal is supposed to sound? How like heavy music is supposed to sound?
That is kind of a little more specific to the bands themselves. Like if a band is if a band kind of has an inherent, maybe we'll say loose or like maybe punk or kind of a
You're being very generous, but I get what I see what you're getting at.
if they have that and like that's like kind of intrinsic to their sound.
If they're maybe not the tightest band, is what you're saying.
Yes, yeah, trying to be nice. Then like I want to. I'm gonna kind of go way more of like try to capture them in how they do that. Whereas if a band is clearly like their parts are very dense and precise and they're playing really fast and like they want I know, that they want all these little details to come through, then things get a little bit more studio-y and like, more punch-ins, more editing, whatever, very nuanced automation in the mix, whatever. Then things will go away from capturing the live performance aspect. But it's not really along genre lines so much as like the band themselves.
So with your work with Sapantli or any of the other bands that you in your role as a producer, do you do things that sometimes come back over into Teeth from a production standpoint, or try things with them, or things that they ask you to do that you end up trying in Teeth as well?
Not not like not really, not deliberately. I mean, sometimes like okay, a little bit. For example, this one band, Our Place of Worship is Silence, their second record that I did with Inexorable Suffering.
Those guys were in Teeth as well, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they had a vocalist on that record that did this. He did these like overdubs where he just do this like absolutely disgusting, like really tonguey kind of noise. Like if you soloed it out, it's like really like that. Like it was it was very like fucking out there and just like disgusting sounding. And that stuck out to me. And me and Justin did a little bit of that on the Teeth record. Or I don't know, sometimes a band will come through. Like I've had like kind of more hardcore or like grind, whatever bands come and they'll have like a delay pedal and they set it really crazy so it's oscillating on itself and they'll fuck with it in a certain way. And, I'll be like, whoa, okay, that's I didn't that's a thing. So I'll kind of like take that and maybe incorporate it here and there. But yeah, I would say like little things here and there, but not really too much on the whole.
So by the time people hear this podcast, the album will be out. What do you guys have planned for the rest of the year in terms of tours and shows?
We got a show coming up August 30th at Knuckleheads in Hollywood. And then that'll be with Laceration, a really sick band from the North Bay area. And then we got our official release show September 26th at Alex's Bar in Long Beach. That'll be with some Pontley, Karst, and Dower. And then we got some shows in the works for early November. And hoping to do some touring probably early next year.
Very cool. So, the last time we spoke, you already had music ready for this album. Do you have music for future Teeth releases? Anything you want to tease?
At the moment, nothing.
Okay.
There's literally not even a single riff. No, we are shifting gears into like let's play this record live. The idea of like let's do another record is seems very distant at this moment, but I'm sure we will get around to it soon enough.
Cool. What about your work as an engineer? Is there anything you want to tell people? Anything you're working on that you want people to know about?
Man, it's like I'm always working on so much stuff at any given time. I like don't even. It's like I don't even remember. Hold on. So there's this band. They're called Teary. They're kind of more of like a shoegaze kind of post kind of tip. That's a band I've been working with lately. It's not death metal, but yeah, that's some cool stuff. It's actually the bass player of this band, Seizures, that I've worked with in the past too. They're kind of more of a chaotic, like spastic hardcore band, kind of mathcore maybe. So it's his new project. And then it actually just dropped 3 days ago. There's another band that me and Alejandro are in called Duca that full length came out on Good Fight Records. It's called A Place You Can't Come Back From. And that's kind of like more on the like groove metal slash, it's like a little more like hardcore, but maybe kind of, I don't know, rhythmic, disjunct, kind of groove oriented metal, for lack of a better term.
Very cool. So, by the time people hear this, The Will of Hate will be out through Translation Lost Records. Rolly, please tell everyone how they can order the album. What's the best way to get it?
Best way to get it is you could get it from Translation Lost, just translationlost.com, or you could get it through us off our Bandcamp, teethband.bandcamp.com. You could also get our merch stores connected to our Bandcamp, so all of our merch will be there. Yeah, those are the places.
Do you want to say anything about the vinyl versions that Translation Lost produced for this album?
I know there's going to be like 3 different variants. I can't tell you right off the top of my head the specifics of them.
I believe there's going to be a silver version, a ripple version, and something called a tricolor merge with splatter.
See? Well, thankfully, you know these things better than I do. Yeah. Honestly, when it comes to the vinyl, Drew from Translation Loss, that's his department. He's the Zen master of forward thinking and ambitious vinyl designs. And we just kind of like, here's the music, here's the artwork, you do your thing because that's your realm and you do it right there. And he always comes back with really cool shit. So, yeah.
Now, honestly, as an engineer and as the guy who handles the mastering, does the vinyl really sound better? Does it sound better than the digital version?
People, no.
Everything would be better than my crappy laptop speakers, but I'm just curious.
Like, I mean, it doesn't sound better. It's more romantic, but like,
Right.
I mean, this is you're putting it on a medium that's like fucking, I don't know, decades old technology. It's not going to sound better, but as far as a physical thing, it's cool.
Yeah.
It looks cool. If you want to have a physical representation of the music, I think it's much more interesting and engaging of a, actual item than a CD. So, but like, does it sound better? No. I mean, you only lose data going to vinyl. So,
Yeah.
And then vinyl itself degrades over time, even if you take good care of it. Like, it's literally every time you play it, a little bit of the material kind of wears down or dust gathers, what have you.
So I think what you're saying is everyone who wants to buy the vinyl version of the new record will need to buy two versions, right? Like one to listen to and one to keep.
I'm pretty sure you get a download code with the the vinyl, so you don't need to buy two. You could just do what everyone does: buy the LP, download it, and then just like look at it and stream it off your
Listen to
phone.
it on your phone.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, fuck,
exactly.
who are we kidding? Like, that's what everyone does if they even buy the physical thing.
Right. And if people want to follow Teeth online and get updates on the tours that you mentioned, what's the best way to do that?
Best way is our Instagram, which is at Teeth Band.
And as far as your work as an engineer, how can people follow that? Or how can people get in touch with you? How can bands get in touch with you if they want to work with you?
Follow my personal Instagram, which is at Rolie Ulug. That's at ROLLIEULUG. And if you know, you could DM me there if you're interested in working with me or what have you.
So for the second time, you've been very generous with your time. But is there anything you want to add? Anything else you want to say?
Not really. Thanks for having me back. You know, appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rolly.
You got it.